Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Ben Backus.
And I'm Kevin Paulin, and welcome to the Falling Up Podcast, where we have discussions about turning obstacles into opportunities. And on today's show, we have the pleasure of having Mr. Stephen P. Campbell join us.
Stephen recently published a book called See Through Emotions, Poetry from a Mental Prison, and that's C spelled S-E-A.
On this show, we talk about everything with Stephen. We talk about his childhood, trauma he endured, his time incarcerated, all the way up to now, where he's a few months away from receiving his master's degree in organizational leadership.
So without further ado,
welcome to the Falling Up Podcast.
have you been on a podcast before?
I have.
Yeah. What was that experience like?
The first podcast I did,
Which one was it?
Sound Minds.
Okay.
Sound Minds. I knew the dude, well, one of the dudes that was hosting it, basically grew up with him. So, he just knew what I was doing, and he proposed it to his other hosts, and it was cool. I've been more open with talking and sharing my story. So,
yeah. Was that hard to get into that mindset of opening up?
Yeah, a little bit at first. Breaking down different barriers I had on my own mind and within my own self, and just being open to wanting to change, wanting to do things different.
When you think back of like not wanting to share that story, what do you think it was that held you back?
Not wanting to share my story, it's probably more just not really feeling like it had any real true value.
Okay.
When did you learn that it did have value?
Well, to share my story, I started to learn I had value. I guess I feel like I had value at certain moments growing up, but then that kind of faded away. I feel like due to the lifestyle that I was living, the way I was living, if I look back at it, I don't really feel like I value my life that much. For me to be doing a lot of things that I was doing and involved in the activities, I ain't really value my life. However, I was, surviving. I was more in survival mode.
Right.
And then, once I got incarcerated and had the time to really reflect and think, I started to value my life more, really started to take time to make decisions and analyze the outcomes of certain decisions, the long-term effects of decisions. And then, once I came home, I knew I had value, but I didn't feel sharing my story was valuable to anybody in that sense. More people would talk about my experience of incarceration, how much time I did due to everything that I was doing once I came home, just getting employment as a dishwasher, deciding to go to school and sticking with it, how rough it was, so... And then the more I kept doing it, the more confidence I got. And then the more I felt the need to tell my story. But for me it was the accomplishments that gave me the confidence to share it more.
Right.
Oh, you got me fucking pumped up for this conversation, man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you just hit on so many different things that I'm excited for this.
I'm excited too.
But so something I'm curious about, right, is so before you kind of felt comfortable sharing your story, it sounds like you were very much putting in the work, on the right path, making real positive change in your life. Do you feel like more change came after you shared your story? Do you feel like by sharing it, it created new doors and kind of just threw you into this new dimension of change, or was it not? Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. So I say absolutely. I never forget, I was working at Goodwin College, Goodwin University now in East Hartford, Connecticut. And it was a tour of young entrepreneurs, looking to do like it was a accelerate program, Tech Stars through Stanley Black and Decker, and they were coming through the tour going. A bunch of startup companies from all over the world, and I was kind of leading the tour, showing the machines we had, the processes that we do, things like that. And the individuals from upper management, the upper part of the organization from going, they was down, conducting the tour too. And it was a gentleman that I was introduced to, and they, was like, Stephen, share your story. So I kind of gave him a dry story. I went through the program 15 weeks, completed it, got a job, now I work here type of a thing. And that was it. So shout out to Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter, that's a very influential individual in my life. But he was, an employee with me at the time. And he basically pulled me to the side and he was like, yo, when somebody tell you to tell your story, you tell your story. And I'm like, nah, man, I don't feel like people ready for my story. Like, I just didn't. He was like, that's not up for you to decide.
Right.
Like, when somebody tell you to tell their story and they give you the opportunity to tell your story, you tell your story. Because, for me, like, it blew my mind when Goodwin first asked me if I wanted to be employed, through them, working as a lab tech. So, because of, the nature of my offense, I didn't feel like that type of opportunity would be in the cards for somebody like me. So it was mind-boggling for them to offer me the position, and then now they encouraging me to share my story. So after that conversation with Mr. Carter, I'm like, all right, I would test the water and open up a little bit more, and be like, well, after I was released from incarceration, boom, and then it was being received in a positive manner, because it's still going on now, but at that time it was more at the beginning, at the peak stages of the whole Second Chance initiative, and making sure individuals reintegrate back into society, in a positive manner and things like that. So I just started sharing it, and by me sharing more of my story, it allowed other people to invest in me, to really understand, like, okay, this is what he doing and this is where he comes from. Like, I want to encourage that. So now it became more like, I have different people that's looking to sponsor me in different ways, and they more so like encouraging me and rooting me on, So a lot of opportunities came out of me, like opening up more and sharing my story.
Yeah, it's really this incredible thing where we think the shame and the guilt associated with our fuck ups, hey, I can't let the world know. Then what are they going to think? But by just being transparent, I don't have to hide. I don't have to think. I can just do. And these opportunities do open up. It's such a almost counterintuitive concept. So with that said, I'm really, you left a lot of kind of cliffhangers in that. So I'm excited to jump in. I'm going to let Kev,
oh yeah,
what you got?
Well, I just want to take it back. Well, first I want you to introduce yourself to our audience and just, so let them know who you are, where you're from, and we can go from there.
All right. So Stephen Campbell, Hartford, Connecticut.
Heartbeat.
So right now I'm an instructor at Goodwin University. I teach advanced manufacturing. I was released from incarceration in 2016, did 9.5 years, and I got into a program, and that program just, it opened a lot of doors, and it led me down this path, down this journey to finding myself right now as we speak in the master's program. So I'm about 8 months away from getting my master's degree. And I just published my first book, See Through Emotions, SEA. And I'm also working on creating programs, for individuals that's just coming home from incarceration, reentry, and also at-risk youth.
So where did this journey start for you?
Where did it start? What part of the journey?
The part that has prompted you into all the work you've done giving back, creating this poetry, which is actually incredible. And I'm excited for you to be able to share it with our listeners because that it's moving.
Thank you. I mean, I had to say it started with me. You know, everything that I've been through led up to this very moment. You know, me writing a book, everything I've been through, just, you know, the way I grew up, you know, just being outside, off the porch at an early age and getting involved in things, figuring out life, you know, led me, you know, to dropping out of high school, 9th grade, and just getting involved in a lot of different activities, you know, thinking I had things figured out. You know, didn't really want to listen to too many people, didn't really feel like anybody understood what I was going through, regardless of if they was older at night. Now I just felt like nobody understands, you know.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Like, so when I was younger, you know, I had people that would look to give me advice, you know, look to guide me, but it was more, you know, I feel like I was so focused on, you know, what I was looking for and what I wanted, and I wasn't really trying to take anybody's advice too much. I didn't feel like anybody understood what I was going through. I wasn't able to express what I was going through, but I just felt like nobody knew what I was going through. And it led me to have, you know, a lot of different emotions pinned up and finding outlets for it. And those outlets, you know, usually resulted in, you know, some sort of, you know, like what one would consider, you know, a negative light. But I was just trying to process what I was feeling on the inside and then express it the best way I knew how.
Yeah, no, I can really relate to that idea of feeling like no one knows what you're going through. And for me, that was feeling like, dude, if you guys only knew, you'd do the same shit I was doing, and using that as like a double down to just keep engaging in those behaviors and those things. And it was like the greatest justification. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about of like actually being able to share what we're going through, share our stories, creating this transparency. And what it ultimately did was tell me, wait a minute, I'm not alone. These feelings, these things that I'm going through that I'm doubling down on to engage in the negative, so many people go through this. And matter of fact, when we share about it, now we can turn it around and go through the positives together. And it created these bonds and these relationships that were just so incredibly meaningful. So incredibly meaningful.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
Can you describe, just for our listeners that's not familiar with Hartford or during your time growing up, can you describe like your neighborhood, just so we can give a picture to what growing up looked like for you?
So, well, for me, it was between Bloomfield, Hartford.
Okay.
So, you know, neighborhood that I was around growing up, you know, when I was in Hartford, it was residential. Mm-hmm. It was residential. So, you know, but at the same time, it's still a section of Hartford. So,
well, yeah, North End.
North End. Mm-hmm. North End. So it was a certain mindset. It was a certain mindset that, you know, everything was around, but it wasn't as present as somebody living on, you know, Albany Avenue or Nelton Court on the other side where they're right there in the thick of it.
Right.
You know, like things was happening, but you had to, you know, go up a few blocks and things like that. And then, you know, every now and again, things would trickle down. It was more like the back streets.
I got you.
Yeah.
And then, so growing up in Hartford, North End of Hartford, Bloomfield border, which is to, like you said, let me think, Garden and Capon, that's active. Even so, you're still a few blocks down, it's only right there. So it ain't too far, you know what I mean? So with that being said, I want to kind of fast forward to your time in incarceration. What was that like for you? Because it seems like that's where a lot of changes started, because you can't start the change until it starts from within, and you came home running. So to me, being that me and you have similar backgrounds when it comes to that, what was that like being incarcerated, and the reasons, or the what motivated you to start thinking different and changing your mindset?
The first thing, so when I got incarcerated, you know, I had $1 million bond, and you know, just everything that comes with $1 million bond, you know, it was surreal. You know, for me, I never imagined myself in that situation. Even everything that I was doing, I never imagined myself in that type of situation,
Right.
which is ironic, right? So,
nobody planned to get caught.
right. But so for me,
Right.
finding myself in that situation is like, you know, it's ironic, like that I was there, but it's like, if I really look at what I was doing, why would I be surprised
Right.
at what just happened?
Right.
So just going back and forth to court in front of the judge, dealing with my lawyer, which was a paid lawyer, and, you know, seeing how this process was really unfolding, and the offers that I was being given and the offers that other individuals was being given, it was like, oh, they playing for keeps.
Right.
You know, so that was something that I didn't really look at when I was out there. I didn't really understand, you know, the full magnitude of the consequences of these actions. You know, yeah, you know that it's a possibility, but now you actually in it. And it's always different when you in it.
Yeah.
Because now, you know, your true colors gonna shine. Like, what you really made of, how you gonna hold it down, how you gonna get yourself through this process. And people choose different routes. So for me, I was more like, didn't understand how somebody could really sit there and offer me all these years and not take it serious. Like, I had to take that serious because it was my life. And for a while, you know, I felt like it was over. You know, I ain't really, even when I copped out and I took 11 years, I didn't feel like I was really going to be able to rebound too much from it. Just understanding that it's a decade.
Right.
You know, and I'm 19, just turning 20, and I'm getting offered these numbers. So that was like the first, I'm saying, starting point of me to really like examine like what I was really doing. And then just seeing how everybody else was reacting to, you know, their circumstances, and a lot of people wasn't really taking it serious.
Right.
And so I just decided to be real. I was always a serious individual, but I was very serious about like what was going on. And I just made up in my mind that at a certain point, it didn't just click overnight. It didn't. It really took me about good 18 months for me really to like, okay, I gotta figure this out, because I was blaming everybody. It still wasn't my fault.
Right.
It wasn't my fault at first. It was like, nah, it's everybody's fault. It's this person's fault, that person's fault, you know, and everybody's fault but my own. So that took a while for me to get to that point. But when I got there, it was like, okay, I can't keep blaming people because I still have X amount of time to do. I did, you know, a small portion of it, but I still got a lot of time to get to, you know, the end of this sentence. So I just started looking at myself, and that's when it really got real. And I say that because of that's when it was rough, because now I'm looking at all my shit and how I really do stink. And once you realize it and look at your shit, you gotta clean it up.
How'd you get to that moment where you were even willing to look at yourself?
I got tired of blaming everybody else. Because the more I blame somebody, the less I'm responsible.
Right.
So if I'm always putting off the outcomes of, you know, my decision on somebody else, then I don't have no real control. That means I'm deferring the responsibility, even though I'm making these choices. I'm giving up, you know, my right to be, you know, responsible for my own actions. And it's hard to grow from that, because you never see yourself as a problem. You never looking in the mirror. You never being honest and critical about your life. So for me, I got tired of giving it up to somebody else because it wasn't changing nothing. Like, all I'm doing is blaming, and then, you know, it was just certain people that, because of how I was carrying myself, they just started gravitating towards me and, you know, suggesting me to read certain material or just write about, you know, what I'm experiencing, things like that. That's how I really got into writing. So it's a piece in here that I ended up writing when I was incarcerated. It's a few pieces in here I wrote when I was incarcerated, but the bulk of them came during COVID.
Okay. The COVID time. So you home now though. So a lot of this was written when you were home.
Yeah, I've been home. March will be 6 years.
Yeah, welcome home. For sure. So I mean, one of the things for us falling up when it ways the relationship that me and Ben have from day one has always been about accountability. So I appreciate that because you lack of control, lack of responsibility, lack of accountability is zero chance to grow.
What were sorry for jumping in. What were some of the you mentioned reading, and we're big fans of reading on this podcast. What were some of the things that you read that kind of helped with the kind of opening the eyes and helping taking that personal responsibility?
Some of the books, self-help books. I remember I read this one book. I forget the author, but it was Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Mm-hmm. And
can't think of the name. Yeah, we talked about it. I can't think of the name.
T. Elks or something like that.
The author.
That's the author name. Harv T. Elk, something like that. But The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Mm-hmm. So that was a very powerful book because it got into, you know, your mindset. Like, it's addressing your mindset. I feel like with the right mindset, anything is possible. Like, I'm a firm believer in that. But you have to be open. And that's what that book talked about. So that book, you know, it just went into breaking down a lot of the thought processes that we have between, you know, a wealth mindset and a poor mindset. And the difference between how those two type of people think. And I never forget one thing I read in that book, and it was talking about, he was given a scenario where a lady was baking a ham. His mother or his wife, somebody was baking a ham, but they always cut the back off the ham. It was like tradition. They had to do it, right? And this is where I really started to understand how we as individuals and humans, we condition. We condition to think a certain way, and we're going to stay conditioned to think a certain way unless we really be open and acknowledge the way we think. And if we feel like it's serving, you know, us and what we want, then you continue to think like that. But if it's not, I feel like you need to reevaluate your situation. So he asked, or somebody asked, like, why do you always cut the back off of a ham? And then when she stopped to think about it, she said, you know, like, I don't know. My mother always did it. So they called the mother and asked, like, you know, why do you always cut the back off the ham? And she said, oh, you know, because the pan I had was too big. I mean, it was too small. The ham wouldn't fit. So I had to cut the back of the ham off for it to fit. But just the daughter growing up, seeing that always cut the back of the ham off, I feel like this is the way it needs to be. So subconsciously, right? Because a lot of things start with your subconscious.
Right.
So subconsciously, you just performing this act and you thinking that this is how you have to do it because somebody else was doing it before you, or somebody else said that this is what needs to be done, whether it still serves you in today's time or not. You still doing it. And it may not even serve your purpose.
Right. That's deep.
Yeah, and it is so true, and it bleeds into so many societal issues today, right? Like, essentially, that is ignorance in a nutshell, right? We're arbitrarily doing something for the sake of doing it and not questioning, hey, why? And then you get this light shown on it, right? And now all of a sudden I have more choices. And you talked about so many things in life are subconscious. And when we are operating on a subconscious level, it's all about automatic behaviors, automatic thoughts. We do what we're accustomed to doing, cutting the back off the ham, because that's what I've done my entire life, right? And we talk so much about like awareness being this thing to strive for. And I always look at it, right? If I don't know that I don't have to cut the back off the ham, I always have to cut the back off the ham. If someone tells me, wait a minute, if you get a bigger pan, you don't need to. Now I have another choice. That doesn't mean I I can still not take that choice and I can still cut the back off the ham. But if I want to, now I have another option. And with that other option often comes better options. And with better options, when we act on them, our lives improve.
Better choices.
Better choices. That's it.
Right.
So that makes just a really, really great point and something to, I know, expand my awareness is having these conversations with people like yourself, reading books like Automatic Millionaire, that's a different book. I'm drawing a blank on what was the book you said before?
Secrets of the Millionaire
Secrets
Mind.
of the Million.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking about, because I know we talked about a millionaire.
That's
book.
another great book that talks about gaining wealth. Anyway, yeah, no, I very much appreciate that example. So coming back to beginning to take this personal responsibility, beginning to get into new literature. What were the people in your life, the relationships in your life like at that time?
Incarcerated, or when people that was still...
I guess all of the above, because it sounds like there's this shift where, hey, when I begin to take personal responsibility, it's hard for me to continue to associate with people who aren't taking that responsibility. But if they're really close, it's also hard to let them go. And
also, before you answer the question, and it also touch on the people that you weren't listening to, because it sounded like there were some people there, but you didn't feel like they understand, so you ain't talk to them. But it sounded like it was someone in the background or family, friends that were positive during your upbringing. So if you want to touch on that too.
Yeah, like, my father always, instilled a lot of wisdom into me. It's just he had a different approach. He had a certain approach that, I didn't agree with at the time, and it caused us to clash a lot growing up. But looking back, I was able to see, so going through my incarceration, I was able to see a lot of things a lot more clearer, and I was able to notice a lot of sacrifices that he was making and why he was doing a lot of the things that he was doing. And I wasn't able to see it in the moment, but, in a lot of ways, and I catch myself doing it, now too. It's like we want kids to do as I say, but not as I do.
Right.
You get what I mean? So
right.
As a kid, for me, I didn't understand. It's like, so what ended up happening, you got the mind control, saying the Smokey effect. Like, come around, I'm gonna be quiet. But when he leave, I'm gonna be talking again. So you only got control over me when you here, because I know how to act and I know how you expect me to act. But when you leave, I'm not gonna do it, because I feel like I'm not really getting a good explanation of why.
Right.
Why am I supposed to do this, or why? Especially if I don't see you really doing it.
Right.
And I'm not really trying to hear, or, I'm an adult, or, it's like, it's certain things that I feel like as, adults or parents, we got to be more mindful, because kids do what they see, not what they told. I'm a firm believer in that. So it's hard to correct a child on something that you haven't corrected in your own life.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's real.
If you're looking for that type of correction to really be effective.
Right.
So the people, like I had at that time, I feel like, my father, he started to realize, a lot of his actions. And, because it took him, me and him, it took us a while for us to really start communicating once I was incarcerated for different reasons. And then, my mother was always around, and, my sister, she used to come up to see me, and just seeing like her transition, so I was just talking about a lot of things that led to, improvement, development. I would share different knowledge that I was coming across with anybody who was willing to listen. And some people, I say it to them, and then, it'll turn into, oh, what you think, you better, or, certain things like that. And, I had my ways of addressing those type of situations, but, I just didn't let nothing deter me from the path that I was on. I dealt with whatever I needed to deal with to make sure that I was still going to stay focused on my journey. And I just wanted to learn, because I had questions on everything. I wanted to question everything. Nothing was adding up anymore. So I started saying, nah, I'm not believing that no more. I'm not just going on. You got to tell me why. And if you can't tell me why, then that's cool, but I'm going to figure it out.
Right.
But I'm not just taking what you saying no more. I'm not taking what nobody's saying no more. I got to go and figure it out for myself. So I just stopped listening blindly to people.
Start doing your own research.
I started doing my own research, and then I started keeping people, around that I could really have these, meaningful conversations with. And a lot of times, it was older dudes that had time in, and they were knowledgeable themselves. And, those type of older dudes, they didn't waste their time with anybody because they understood the value of time. As much time as they had. They understood, and they just wasn't looking to give their time to somebody that they felt was a knucklehead that wasn't really going, casting pearls amongst the swine type of a thing.
Right.
Yeah, what you just all of that's courage right there, right? To be able to stop taking things at face value and question, especially if it directly challenges our beliefs. And there's so many topics that, at one point in my life, like I was dead set, hey, this is the way it is. This is what I believe. And I was so married and attached to that opinion that if anyone said anything, it could be the most logical thing in the world. But because it directly, it was almost like I took it as an attack. I took these thoughts like they were my thoughts. And it was through exactly what you're describing, seeking people who had knowledge, but also seeking people who could present ideas in a really non-emotional way, and being able to diffuse my guard so I could actually hear it and then be like, wow, that makes way more sense than what I was arbitrarily believing before. And there's a brilliant quote, like, I don't want to be wrong longer than I have to be. And if I get presented with better information, I hope I have the courage to change my opinion. I really hope so, because the amount of pain that I've experienced in my life because I blindly followed my emotions and my beliefs, there's so much, and I guess I had to experience that to be able to have to develop and progress my level of thinking. But it can be a really dangerous avenue just to blindly believe.
Yeah, it's like a hard hand make a soft ass.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. Eventually, that thing, it's gonna beat you up till it beat you up. Well, sticking on to the support system, I'm kind of going back to what we were talking about that tour, Mr. Carter. Tell me about Mr. Carter.
So Mr. Carter started working at Goldwyn with me. This is probably 2017, somewhere around there. And, he was a welder, African-American gentleman, welder, good dude. And he used to just talk to me a lot. And, everybody's seen a lot in me that I wasn't able to see in myself. Even now, like, people see more in me than I really see in myself. And I'm still working on developing my confidence. Because I have a lot of stigmas that, weigh me down. And sometimes I still got to break barriers in my mind to say, like, nah, like, I got this, and I am worth it. Like, I do deserve more. So just like, it's really an internal battle. It's a real internal battle, but I'm just open, like, and I don't have to be right. I don't. I just want to learn. I just want to learn the best approach to get to where I want to be. Like, I feel like I have a good idea and a vision of what I want to create. And I always seek out people that could truly help me. And when I say truly help me, I'm not about to go talk to a plumber if I got problems with finances.
Right.
I'm going to go talk to a finance guy.
Yeah.
Accountant or something, because you have experience doing this. If I go talk to the plumber, it's like mixing, oil and water. It's like, it's not a match. Like, I'm going to the wrong source for the wrong thing. So I want to talk to people who have done it, because how can you really tell somebody how to do something if you've never really done it or experienced yourself?
Right.
Because now you're just giving your opinion, and then we back to, like, I'm blindly leading somebody based on what they feel it should be or how it can be done, but they never really did it. It's like, that's like, it's theory, and it hasn't been tried and proven yet. So I wanted to deal with people that, have, achieved what I was looking to achieve, so you could help guide me to get there a lot more smoother, so I can avoid some pitfalls that I don't have to get into.
Right. Cheat codes. those are
Yeah.
the cheat codes,
Trying
right?
to work smarter.
And How to Win Friends and Influence People, they talk about that with Henry Ford. He's like, I didn't create this on my own. I just found people who were smarter than me and brought them on, and I led the team, and we went to beautiful places. But why recreate the wheel? And that's the beautiful thing about life is humans are so resilient, and we've overcome so much. And unfortunately, it does take, like, I wish that we could take these intellectual ideas and have that immediately turn into feelings, because that would solve so much pain. But I can't. A lot of times I have to go through the pain of not doing something right to get the motivation to actually take the suggestions. Instead of just being able to get, like, you tell me, hey, I've been through XYZ and this is what happened. Don't do it. Do ABC. I'll be like, all right, cool. Like, I totally get that. That makes sense in my head. But then I still go and I do XYZ. And I think slowly, what do there's a great quote, and I forget how it goes, but it kind of talks about, like, the key is to be able to learn from other people's mistakes. Like, that is the best way to learn. But it is really hard to do that.
It is. So growing up, man, it was this one dude, like, nobody really understood his process. But he, in my opinion, was, from my experience and people that I know, one of the best ones that ever did it. Because he learned from other people's experience. Like, so when you hear about, vicariously learning, it's like, that was him but what he did was unique, and it took me to get incarcerated, to be jammed up in my own situation, to really start to see, a lot of things. Because I felt like the more I was able to control myself, the more I was able to control a lot of things, So I used to see, like, why he used to move the way he did. He never jumped the gun on nothing. He would sit back. He would think about it. He would take himself away from the situation and really sit and process it and analyze it. And nobody knew that that's what he was really doing. And he would make his moves based off of certain information that he gathered. He would wait for it. He would wait for it. He would be patient. And he would really understand the importance of taking his time to make an executive decision.
Yeah, you touched on so many great things right there.
Yeah.
The idea, nothing good, or very rarely does something good come quick, right? It takes time to plant the seeds, to water them, and to watch them grow. And I know the times in my life that I inevitably get into the most trouble is when I think I got to get rich quick scheme, right? Like, hey, I can just do something really quick. I can bypass all the hard work. I can bypass all the blood, sweat, and tears and get my outcome. And unfortunately, right, I know I'm going to get shit for saying this, but you always pay for what you get, right? You always do. You always pay for what you get.
Listen, you got to pay the piper. I don't care what it is, who you are, you have to pay the piper. And that means that's a broad statement, but you got to pay. You're going to have to pay one way or another. There's no way around it. You have to pay. And that goes into all the old what do you call those? The wisdoms.
Yeah.
Like, so you reap what you sow. You got to pay.
Right.
Like, you can't, so I talk about, consequences. I feel like people take consequences in a negative connotation just because it's a consequence. But I don't look at it like that. A consequence is just that. It is what it is. It's just a consequence. Now, how someone views the consequence determines whether it's negative or positive, or you could be indifferent towards it. But you're going to get consequences for your actions, whatever it may be. Like, the consequences of my actions led me here, led me to writing a book. The consequences of my actions when I was younger led me to being incarcerated. And it wasn't until I became more aware of what I was doing and how I led myself down that road, that was when I was able to change it. But then you said plant seeds. Like, so on the back of the book, I have a quote: plant seeds, pluck weeds, and be patient until they bloom and grow. Take one step at a time and continue to climb towards achieving goals. So it's a lot of different things that you have to understand, because once you plant the seeds, the work's still not done. Because now you got to make sure you know, like you plucking the weeds and you taking care and you nurturing this seed that you planting, like your life depend on it, because this your baby.
Yeah.
Right.
And the reality is planting the seeds is often the easy part. It is all the work that comes after, right? I start a business. What does that mean? Well, I incorporate, right? I spend a little bit of money. I get it. But now if I don't do anything, it is going to collapse. It will never produce a dollar. I actually have to then do the work to let it grow. And I get to watch Kevin really, really closely, and I've seen that in his life, right? Coming out with virtually nothing, right? And what got you virtually nothing? Well, it was trying to get the quick fix, right? It was trying to be rich overnight. And then by taking this long play, right, 6, 7, 8 years later, you have this incredible life with all these different things. And that is the journey in a nutshell. And it's just so incredible to see when people are able to take that 1,000-mile view approach and slow play things, it actually comes to fruition. I guess the short version of everything that we're trying to say here is everything takes time. It takes time and hard work, and there's no way to bypass that.
And it's worth it, though.
It's worth it, but we don't think it is, because when I look back even on the things that I've manifested and created in my life, when I was going through it, it seemed like it was never going to end. It seemed like there was no light at the end of the tunnel. And now when I reflect back, like, those are some of my fondest memories. The insanity are some of the things I look back and I'm like, wow, I'm so, like, the amount of pleasure and just satisfaction I get looking back on that. Like, I don't know how the fuck I just did that.
But I did it.
Yeah. And guess what? I don't have to do that again if I don't want to. But if I do want to, I know it's possible. And I know that I can take leaps of faith in life, and I'm gonna land on my feet. And that I guess I'll land on my ass, but I would metaphorically I would land on my feet,
your wheels.
Right? I'll land on my wheels.
There you go.
Yeah.
I want to take a step back because it was something that resonated with me that you said. But I got to ask this question first to see, and then I can make it make sense. Was that your first time being incarcerated?
It was my first time being sentenced as an adult. It wasn't my first time incarcerated. No.
So that's your first time going to prison, first time being away from the family for a long period of time, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And the reason why I asked that is because me and you are very, very similar in terms of thinking we knew it all and didn't take advice and or what you were saying, stuck in our ways and our beliefs. Because when I went to prison, it was my first time going to prison. And I had to vicariously learn how to jail. I had to vicariously learn how to move around prison, from shitters on the toilet to stingers to all. I ain't know none of that till I got bagged. So when you said that, I never thought of it till today that I was forced to learn from someone else, whether they knew it or not. I'm just watching because I don't know how to move. This is my first time in this environment. You know, county jail, yeah, in and out, but never weeks, months, years in a row that I'm living in the same place. I'm DOC, I'm on a Bluebird and all that. So it's really something that's from this conversation, among the many things that we talked about today, but this, knowing like I could tell someone that I work with that's coming home from incarceration that you actually had to learn from somebody else, whether you realize it or not. And that's humbling.
It's so humbling. And I had that same experience back when I was young and I really struggled with drugs, right? Getting sober at that time in my life when I had to put drugs away. I didn't know how to live at all. I didn't know how to experience emotions. I didn't know how to do anything. And fortunately, I had these incredible people in my life that lived my life for me, essentially. I didn't really have to think. I didn't really have to make decisions because they were making them for me. And
they've been there.
I was learning the ropes by watching them. And I was willing to. I think what allowed me to make change is I was willing to let go of that control. I was willing to stop doing what I thought I knew best, which ultimately had led me in my situation. But you use the word humbling, like it's an incredibly humbling situation.
Being humble, especially when you're stubborn, you're hard headed, and you're getting money, to be humbling and give someone else, quote, for the lack of a better term, control. That's a strength of no other. Like, you got to have self-love, self-worth, and the courage to allow yourself to follow someone else or to take the steps and examples that someone else has given you to then apply to your life. Because it's tough. It's tough. It's tough when you think to change that mindset of think you know it all to I don't know nothing. I'm going to learn. That's a 180. That's a big flip.
And it's hard. It's the work's not done once you make that flip, right? Because
I just started.
And what I know happens in my life, and you call me on it all the time, is like I start thinking I know again. And then shit gets real. Then it gets rough, and then I'm like, "Oh man, I don't know anything." Then we go bad. It's like this constant cycle, and continuing to try to improve and realize like I don't know it all, and I'm not going to know it all, but that's okay. I don't need to know it all.
And and all three of us can relate to this because now we went through some heavy trauma. We came out the trauma with great successes and accomplishments, and now we're helping people. So on one side we're an expert. But then on the other side, we got to be mindful to stay humble, and we don't know enough. We still learning. So it's that balance in that. So that's being aware.
And it's also having good people. I'm a big advocate of working smarter, not harder. And if I have a bunch of yes men in my life, I'm gonna start thinking I'm running the world. And then what comes up must come down. Right? When I start thinking I'm running the world, I start getting a big head. I start getting up and up and up. It's got to come down, and that's never fun.
Yeah.
So I'd rather let the people in my life deflate me in real time, and then ideally I don't. The pain from that deflation is a lot. Although it's still painful, I never like to be told that I don't know what I'm talking about. Right? But that is a lot softer.
That is a fact.
It's a lot softer than going all the way, getting blown all the way up, and then getting popped at once.
Oh yeah.
So I want to start to talk about kind of your successes, because it clearly we're looking at a big part of it right here. You mentioned being a pretty short period of time away from having your master's. And you also touched on developing this vision. So can you take us through a little bit of what the vision was and how it's actually played out in real time in your life?
So the vision coming home was just not to go back. That was the biggest vision. Like, I ain't want to go back, but I feel like most people that get out don't want to go back. So
yeah,
it wasn't too much of a distinction between me and anybody else getting out, except the fact that I put a lot of time in preparing myself before I got out. I think that was like one of the best investments I could have done, is like really investing in myself and preparing for myself. And just doing my bid, it wasn't sweet. Wasn't nothing sweet about my bid, and I could talk about a lot of different things that one could feel like I'm glorifying it, but I talk about the real stuff when I actually went, to SAG for the first time. And the reason why I got myself into SAG was because of an investigation, but I lost my cool more than anything with the captain. And
that'll do it.
Oh,
yeah, white shirt. Oh yeah.
But me not being able to control myself with the captain, and even at that point, I still knew I ain't doing anything that got me a disciplinary report. So in my mind, I'm like, man, fuck it. Like, you put me in SAG, I do my SAG time on the investigation, but you're gonna have to let me out. But it wasn't until they wanted me to go through the process of the intake of being in the SAG, and how humiliating it was when I'm already in a humiliating environment. So it was just like what they was asking for me to do. And it was like, me picturing in like the way they wanted me to position myself and then bend over at the knees, spread my butt cheeks and the camera rolling. I'm like, because, going to a visit is a different strip search than you was in SAG. And it's
absolutely.
Like, you want me to do all this extra stuff like I really have something. And I'm not even here for that. But they was really putting the pressure on me because I really had, a clashing with the captain, this superior. So, they had it out for me. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. They took that as me, being like, I really don't know how they took it. All I know is that they put me in the cell restraints like I'm getting ready to go on a court trip, and put me in the cell for 8 hours. So that was my first time in SAG, and I had so much anger, and they came by, I ain't really say 2 words. And they was more like, We want to let you out. You just have to calm down. And that's kind of like the look I gave him, like, fuck me. Like, I ain't say nothing. But you just got to calm down. And then they would look at me and I'm looking at them like, you serious right now? I'm still not saying nothing. I'm just giving them a look. And then they'll walk out, you know what I'm saying? And they didn't let me out until the shift changed. And then I'm just, in there, chained up and doing sit-ups and just trying to get my mind off of like how I really got myself in this situation. Because I was really at a point where I'm taking accountability for my life. So I'm in SAG like, damn, like I really fucked up. Like, I lost my cool with this lady when I could have just kept my cool, still said what I said to her, but delivered it in a different way.
Right.
And, I felt like I could have redirected that whole situation.
That's one of the most miserable feelings in the world. When you realize that, I'll speak for myself, when I realized that something that was kind of out of my control, but in my control, happens and it creates a negative consequence, and then the only person I can blame is myself, but I want to blame everyone else. I want to blame the world, but I have to blame myself. That is the most miserable feeling. Like, fuck, I did it again.
Yeah.
God, it's a painful one, but it's also probably the most empowering experience that anyone can ever have. And for you to be able to have that under those conditions, that's pretty high level stuff right there.
Mm-hmm.
So, from that, it was just like, I really like took stake in looking at myself, self-examination, be it in philosophy. So then when I get out, fast forward, like my vision was, I'm just not going to go back. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I was all the way turned off from the system. I didn't have no faith in the system. I didn't want to do no more programs, nothing, until I sat down with my case manager and expressed to him what my vision was. And my vision was, I'm going to go to school at some point. However, I got a job lined up washing dishes right now, and I'm not looking to do no more programs. I'm really just looking to work, save some money, get out this halfway house, and start to put all this behind me. And then once I get myself situated, then I'll eventually go to school. And I feel like he was so impressed with the way I articulated myself and what I wanted, and how I was so adamant about I'm not looking to do no more programs. When they wanted me to do the assessment, I really did the assessment because I feel like a lot of those questions are designed to trip you up. And if you don't take your time, you'll circle something to where, because all that's being, graded on a scale.
Yeah.
And based on your answers to these questions, they're placing you in programs that they feel you need. So I really took my time to understand the questions on that assessment and filled it out. And I remember it was a dude, that was with me for a period of time when I was incarcerated in the halfway house. And he came by as I was doing it. He like, man, you really answering that, man? Just circle anything. And I'm like, bro, how would you mind your business?
Right.
Because this is my life. And when I gave him the assessment, he looked at it. He said, yo, based on this assessment, I don't feel you need to do any programs. So I was the only individual in the halfway house that didn't have to go to the programs on one night. Everybody going to the program, but I'm like, I don't gotta go.
Yeah, and that goes back to an earlier conversation, right? Like, by taking some time to actually do it, it paid off in the long run. Whereas the people just like blindly filling shit out because it's quick and it's easy, right? You always pay for what you get.
Right.
So based on just my interacting with the case manager in that honest conversation, he goes, I want to recommend you to this program, right? And like I know you in the halfway house, the first pass you get, where you going?
Just a pass.
It's just a pass. I'm going out. I'm going on a job search that I never go look for a job.
What?
You see what I'm saying? So
already
he wrote my first pass and was like, yo, you just show up. So I'm like, and I showed up. When I showed up, the dude was like, you just missed the cutoff by like 2 days. But if you come back in a month, we can get you into the next rotation. So I'm like, all right. Like a few more weeks, I already had the dishwashing job lined up. But I created this vision for myself during my incarceration that I didn't want to go back. And I didn't know how it was going to happen. I just knew that I learned a lot of different things and I created more options for myself to be able to pull from, different skill sets. So I'm like, I'm in a halfway house. I'm not really doing nothing. So all right, I'll come back in a month. I already got the job lined up. Let me just check it out. They was offering 3 different career avenues. construction, culinary, which I ruled out right away for my own reasons. Like I knew that I wasn't about to do either one of those. And then it was CNC manufacturing or machining, and I ain't know nothing about it. So I did a little research, figured out what it was. It's computer numerical control. So basically, you use math as precision. It's a scale. You got 0, and then you move so far off of 0 to get to a known location. So I looked it up. It's running machines, programming, stuff like that. Like stuff that to me it makes sense because it's logical and it's precision. So it's right or wrong. So I already had an interest in math. Like math was my favorite subject in school. So I'm like, okay, I'll go check it out. And there was a bunch of prerequisite courses that you had to do to get into the actual, 15-week certificate program at Goodwin. But I did it and I got in. And that was like a trying time because now I'm in the program. I'm still in the halfway house. I'm still working my part-time job. It's May of 2016. It's a few months after I've been released. And I'm in school full-time, 5 days a week from 8 to 4. And a lot of the material wasn't even making sense. But there were certain things that, I made sense. I was able to make sense of certain things. And after the 15 weeks, a lot happened. And I was really getting ready to stop going to school about 3/4 into the 15 weeks. So about 12 weeks in, 11 weeks in or something, I ended up losing my little brother. He was fighting cancer and I was ready to just shut down. And something in me was like, you shut down, like you reverting back to your old ways, like just shut down. I was going to like turn into a hermit, shut down, not say nothing to anybody and just disappear off the face of the earth as far as Goodwin was concerned. But something, I feel like you always have that inner voice, like your intuition speak to you. And something was like, just open up, like to let somebody know what you got going on, and it goes back to like, you never know what somebody has going on until, you start really talking to people. And, I opened up and that ended up, resulting in somebody coming and giving me some sound advice. Like, I get it, but whatever you do, like, just finish this. Like, you only got a few weeks left. If you could just, take some time off, get your head together, but come back, just finish it. So I'm like, all right. And I did. And I just always had like a better version of myself than incarceration like that. To me, that wasn't it. And, it wasn't like I was a saint because I wasn't even coming home. I still wasn't. But I knew everything I experienced going through my incarceration. And me being able to have the opportunity to just walk outside, and even if I'm walking outside the halfway house doors, like that's something that you can't just do.
Right.
I could walk down the hall. I could do a lot of things that I didn't have the privilege of doing being incarcerated. So I always kept certain things, at the forefront of my mind. And I finished it, and then Goodwin was like, yo, y'all finished. It was like 9 of us that finished in my cohort out of 16. It was like, we'll offer y'all additional 15 weeks. And I'm like, listen, this ain't really making sense. I just did 15 weeks. I don't really have the confidence to go get a job or anything. Like, I might not do it. Like, and then they talked to me, and every time they talked to me, it made sense. So I'm like, all right. I still had my job, though, doing dishes. I wasn't going to give that up because I felt like when I was in there, and you can attest to this, the average job, you're going to get 75 cents a day. Mm-hmm. And that's $10.50 every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So I always looked at that when I went to work, and I was getting $10.50 an hour. So I take $10.50 an hour over 75 cents and $10.50 every 2 weeks, any day of the week.
Yes.
So I'm like, all right, I do the additional 15 weeks. And what's interesting was during that 15 weeks, because a lot of things happened in between that time of me really going to school and being outside and being around dudes. Because now, the end of the summer, like leading up to the end of the program, the 15-week program, the first one, I'm out the halfway house. So, you know, I'm able to be outside. I'm around people more, and things is unfolding, and I'm seeing things, and I'm seeing like how easily something could turn unexpectedly in a drastic way. And I ain't want to get caught up in that no more. So I'm like, yo, I'm straight. I'm going to school. Like something happened that caused me to be like, you know, I'm really about to go to school. Like I'm not about to be out here. And it was a situation where, you know, I'm just chilling with, you know, a few dudes that I know, and we, you know, on the block, but up the block it's another group of dudes. It's broad daylight, a commotion, you know, from the group of dudes up the block. One dude pulls out, starts shooting. You know what I mean? So I was actually in the car talking to my 9-year-old daughter, and the dude, you know, spun the gun around. He ain't let off no shots in our direction, but only thing kept playing in my mind was like, what if he did? Like, could have hit me, could have hit the girl, anything. And then, you know, in that moment, it's like I started to see, like, from a different perspective, like the things that, you know, we was getting into when we was younger, and not really thinking about the consequences of it. Or even, you know what I'm saying, the full weight of these consequences. So that's when I'm like, yo, I ain't about to just be out here just to be out here and I get caught up in somebody else's bullshit.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So I really made a commitment to go to school, as hard and tough as school was, for me to just stay committed to it, considering all the different temptations I had around me. And once I finished the second 15 weeks, that's when I started to make a clearer vision, like, okay, because now I had the confidence. So I feel like my vision came as I kept going and, you know, making these small achievements to help build my confidence and help see a clear vision. And then now I'm like, okay, I could see myself really getting into this CNC world or the machining world. So I got a job, and they taught me into going up for my associate's degree. And as I'm going for my associate's degree and working in the industry, the vision became more clearer. And that's when I feel like I really locked in. Like when Goodwin came to me 8 months into working in the machine shop and offered me a position part-time as a lab tech, they offered me the position part-time as a lab tech. That's when I really started to see a better vision, but it was still kind of fuzzy. So it was just like me just dedicating myself to putting one foot in front of the other, regardless of what was going on around me, and just staying focused for a full focus. And the more I stayed focused, the clearer the vision became. But it wasn't like I had this grand vision that, you know, I was going to write a book, I was going to be here. And then, you know, the more I just kept doing and taking advantage of opportunities, yo, you want to speak on the WNPR, we talking about advanced manufacturing, can you represent us? All right, I'll do it. Just taking it. And the moment that is about to happen, like, I'm nervous as a fuck. You know what I'm saying? And I really want to call out, but I'm like, I can't do that. I already told him I was going to do it. Like, my word on that. Like, how would I look? I already told him I'd do it. Now, the morning of, you know, it's time to go, I'm not going to show up. Like, I ain't want that reputation.
That's it.
So I would do
Integrity.
But I never forget the first time I did, like, you know, a little phone. It was a phone call in to WNPR talking about advanced manufacturing. And I was nervous. I did it. After I did it, I was happy it was over, but I felt nervous in the way people received it. I didn't know if it was going to be received good.
You were in a vulnerable state.
But what happened when I went to the school, everybody was like, yo, you did a great job. You articulate yourself well. You know, we could tell you knew what you was talking about. And then, like, that builds confidence. And then just I kept it going.
Yeah. And I want to break down just some of these principles that you talked about in that stretch, the amount of you just gave everyone the roadmap to living quality life. And when you talk about not having the whole vision, how could anyone have the whole vision, right? Meaning that we don't know what we don't know. We know what we know today. And by opening one door, you get access to another door. And by opening that door, you get access to the next. Meaning, if you walk through this door, you've never been here before. If you were to take a right and open that first door, you have no idea what's behind it. You open that, now you start to know. So as you began to take specific actions, new doors that you couldn't even dream about opened up. And that enhances the vision. And I'll never forget, after I broke my back, the only thing I knew I wanted to do was to try to share my story. Try to, at first, prevent people from doing what I did. Not knowing that by doing that, I was probably causing more damage than good, because I was taking my experience and saying that that's everyone's experience. As I went to school and I became a little more informed of human behavior and understanding these things, I was able to then shift my purpose of speaking, and then that led to the next thing, to the next thing. I had no idea, if you asked me when I started, that we would be doing a podcast, right? Like that literally wasn't a thing anywhere, but now I absolutely love doing this. So the fact that you had the courage to keep going, not fully knowing where it was going to lead, that let you get to where you are today. And then the other thing, and I can't stress this piece enough, you talked about developing confidence, right? I love the simple saying, and I'm sure I've said it on here before, like, you want self-esteem, do esteemable things. Confidence comes from doing things that earn confidence. And part of that is experiencing the wild vulnerability of doing something new. Going and putting yourself out, putting your story out for potentially thousands of people to hear, that leaves someone in a really vulnerable state. But it also creates this whole newfound set of skills, set of experiences that you can then go back and be like, hey, I remember that time I went on the radio and I was terrified the whole time and I thought I did a terrible job, but then I ended up doing incredible and everyone backed that up. You can use that in any situation that's similar moving forward. It's inspiring, right? When there's so many people who talk about these concepts but don't actually do it. So to be sitting with someone who's done it, who's been in the lowest of the low and now is doing amazing things and helping so many people. That's the inspiring piece. So can you talk a little bit about this book and maybe share a poem or two with our audiences?
Yeah, sure. So See Through Emotions, and it's SEA, Through Emotions. The subtitle was Poetry from a Mental Prison. Like, this book came about behind COVID, so at some point, me just going along this journey and people knowing me, like, from interacting with me, they was like, yo, you write a book, like share your story through a book. Like, I feel like it'll be very meaningful. And I'm like, I'm gonna write a book, because I've been in school the whole time, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of sacrifices, and it come with a lot. Like, for me, it's not like the work is hard. It's really sitting down and doing the work. That's the hard part. Finding the time, saying no to this, because, like, looking at, saying the long-term play of it, like what you gonna get in the long term. So I ended up finding more time when COVID happened, because of how everything shifted around and, everything virtual. So you don't have to physically be in, the office anymore. And I just started, like, taking time and writing down my thoughts. And that's one of the gifts that I really developed, or came into understanding that I had, was putting words together when I was incarcerated. And I used to write journals. I just used to write. And sometimes I didn't even want to write, because I wouldn't feel like what I'm writing is making sense. And I still struggle with writing, just really getting going. And because I feel like when I write, I want it all to come together right now. The way I want to put it out perfect. Like, I struggle with that. So I just really started writing, and I feel like I'm giving a lot of the insights and the wisdom that I learned, through my experience, my lived experience, like really going through a lot of my struggles and overcoming it. And then how I did, what people feel like is impossible. Because I feel like, anything is possible with the right mindset and the right level of, determination, making the right sacrifices. Anything is possible. Like, if you really want it, then you can have it. But you have to put the work in. You got to pay for it. You got to pay for it.
Right.
So, that's why this book came about. But see through emotions, the deeper meaning of it is, you know, understanding that everybody has emotions. Everybody goes through emotions. Everybody shares this human experience. So we're not different in that sense of having emotions. And whatever you find yourself faced with in life, it's a circumstance, and everybody has circumstances. Then it all depends on how, you know, you're perceiving these circumstances, how you're approaching these circumstances and things like that. And that's where like you gotta learn and understand to navigate through these treacherous waters and still be able to identify, if you can't identify like what you want, be able to identify like a direction you want to go in until you could start to see that thing clearer and be like, okay, that's what I want. But that you want to go in this direction. You got to identify, something. If you out here, you just wandering aimlessly, you liable to go any which way. And now you're not in control. So just basically navigating your life and getting the things that you say you want. And, doing the things that is really going to require to get it. That's what See Through Emotions is about. So it's broken down into 4 different sections. It's the past, it's introspection, it's growth and development, and then it's relationships. Those are the 4 sections. It's at least about 10 poems in each. So, it's a very, powerful book. It's a very powerful book, but it's given up in a poem format.
Is there one that you would be able to share?
Yeah, I could share one. What was it? Growing up. Growing up, I believe it's in the first section. Growing up, you get numb when you see too many people dying. These streets get so cold, you don't even see them crying. The energy in the air is thick. It'll make you go and get a gun quick. Stomach rumbling will force you to get a drug to flip. Dave E said you gotta watch out for them stick-up kids because they do exist. There's really goons and gremlins lurking in the cut waiting to put you in the ditch. Your own friends would get jealous when they see you trying to lay a brick. The same dudes you grew up with will get you lined over a bitch. And I don't mean no disrespect. I'm just giving you a true script. These streets will get you locked in a box or jammed in a can. A lot of dudes out here is frauds. They doing scams. You gotta learn that no one gonna hold your hand. You gotta decide whether you gonna play these streets hustling grams or you gonna come up with a constructive plan to own your own land and take care of the fam. But whatever you decide, you gotta live with the consequences that lies on the other side. So
Dope.
Where can people find this to hear more of that?
I mean, right now you can find it on the website, royalgenterprise.com. No spaces. So Royal G, ROYALG enterprise.com. That's the soft landing page. It's under construction. I'm actually about to, release the full website, I say around December 18th. So in a few weeks, the full website is going to be up. You can learn about, what I have to offer, programs and different services, how you could, become a part of the community and things like that. If you want to support, you can learn all that from the website. It'll be up, say about December 18th. But yeah, that's where you can find it right now. You
awesome.
Follow me on IG, Royal G Enterprise. Facebook, Royal G Enterprise.
That's your social media handle?
Yeah.
All right. So Royal G Enterprise over Facebook, Instagram. Okay.
So to wrap up, we like to ask every guest one final question. And that is, if you were to speak to someone who had fallen down and it was in a really rough spot in life and didn't necessarily see a way out, if you could give them one piece of advice, what would that be?
Be open, man. It's not the end. Anything is possible. Some of the people that you look to right now that you feel is the most successful, they hit a bottom. Everybody, I feel like a lot of people hit a bottom. And it's not about hitting the bottom. It's about what you're going to do once you hit the bottom. Like what you're going to do now. Because now you still breathing. So you still got an opportunity to do something, but it's up to you whether you're going to stay there or whether you're going to take that, analyze it, learn from it, gain new information, and then, create something. Because you can still create whatever you want. Just because you hit a bottom, it don't mean nothing. What means something is what you do going forward. Like going forward, that's the key. Like looking forward focus. You know what I mean? So that's what I would say. Like, it is what it is. Like, look at it, take the time, understand why this even happened. What was your role in it? Understand what's your role in it. I feel like if it's your life, you the star of your life. You did something, whether knowingly, unknowingly, consciously, subconsciously, you did something. You played a hand in you being in that situation. So just understand your role, and if you don't like it, work to change it. Work to change it.
Take that responsibility.
That's right.
Well, we appreciate you, man. It really, truly had a great time today. Everyone check out See Through the Emotions. And yeah, thank you.
Poetry
thank
from
you.
a mental prison.
Poetry from a mental prison.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Falling Up Podcast.
Thank you.